Hello, my name is Rachel Davis and today we are going to look at what covalent bonds are, the different types of covalent bonds, and also the dot and cross diagrams that represent covalent bonds in atoms when they share electrons. So, a covalent bond is a chemical bond that involves the sharing of electrons between atoms. Most of the atoms have an incomplete outer shell, which means they're unstable, and to become stable, they follow a rule called the octet rule, which means they need 8 electrons in their outer shell. There are a few exceptions to this rule, such as hydrogen, which only has a single electron shell and can only hold 2 electrons. The covalent bonds that are formed between these atoms are usually strong due to the nucleus being attracted to the shared electrons. The bonds usually occur between atoms of the same element or atoms that are close together on the periodic table. There are different types of covalent bonds that can be formed between atoms sharing electrons, and the type of bond depends on the number of electrons that are being shared. There are single and multiple covalent bonds, with single bonds involving sharing only 1 electron, while multiple bonds involve sharing 2 or more electrons. When 2 electrons are shared, it is known as double covalent bonds, or triple bonds are when 3 electrons are shared. Simple molecular bonds have different properties than larger, more complex structures. On the right you can see an example of some simple single covalent bonds being formed, as well as some multiple covalent bonds that are being formed. Dot and cross diagrams are used to represent covalent bonds and show the shared electron from one atom as a dot and the shared electron from the other atom as a cross. Only electrons in the outer shells are represented in these diagrams. As you can see below, we've got atoms of hydrogen, chlorine, oxygen and hydrogen chloride, and I'm going to show the covalent bonds being formed using these dot and cross diagrams. As we know, hydrogen doesn't follow the octet rule, it actually follows the duet rule, so instead of needing 8 electrons in its outer shell, it only needs 2 electrons in its outer shell to become stable. So I'm going to draw the first hydrogen electron as a green circle, and the electron from the second hydrogen atom as a red cross. Therefore, each hydrogen atom is sharing an electron, making their outer shell number 2 electrons, therefore becoming stable and forming a covalent bond. Chlorine actually has 7 electrons in its outer shell, therefore only needs to share 1 electron from another atom. So I'm just going to draw the electrons currently on the shell. So there's 6 red crosses, and then I'm going to put the 7th there. As you can see, that's being shared with the first chlorine atom, making its total electron shell number 8, and the second is also sharing the green dot atom electron, which is making that outer shell number 8. So the electrons are being shared, a covalent bond is formed, and the molecule is now stable. Oxygen contains 6 electrons in its outer shell, again following the octet rule, which means 8 electrons are needed in the outer shell to become stable. It needs to share 2 more electrons from the other atom. Just going to draw the X's there. So as you can see, the electrons in the middle there are being shared between the 2 atoms, so 2 electrons from each atom being shared, making the total number of electrons in their outer shells 8, therefore forming a covalent bond and becoming stable. As we previously mentioned, for hydrogen chloride, the hydrogen atom only has 1 electron in its outer shell, which is the red cross. Chlorine has 7 electrons in its outer shell. Sharing the electron from the hydrogen atom makes the total number of electrons in the chlorine atom 8, and the hydrogen, again following the duet rule opposed to the octet rule, only means needing 2 electrons in its outer shell. Both have now become stable, forming that covalent bond and the share of electrons. So now we know that a covalent bond is a chemical bond that involves the sharing of electrons between atoms. That covalent bonds can be single or multiple depending on the amount of electrons being shared. And that dots and cross diagrams represent the electrons being shared across the atoms. Thank you for watching.